Hey, Mark.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Sorry, I'm just gonna quickly update myself in the GitHub repo. Always last minute.
Hello,
Yeah.
people.
Oh my God, my favorite voice. I don't even need to like look to know who that is.
It would be really great if the host would add herself
I'm
to,
I'm
to
doing
the
it right now.
agenda.
That's why I'm not looking at you. Uh,
Brutal.
okay.
Yeah,
Commit
but I mean, Bench is here and he's also not in the agenda, so you're good.
create pull request. Okay.
Listen, no one on YouTube would have known I was here if you hadn't said that.
Now they have heard you.
Now they have heard you. Okay, there's another pull request from whom? Oh, Michael. From uh oh, is this a merge conflict? Whatever. Oh yeah, sorry. Mike is Michael's merge conflict. Let me resolve it. What's going on? Accept pause. Okay. Mark is resolved. Commit.
I have too many terminals open.
Okay, let me just refresh one more time to see if we don't have open ones. Oh, Jeff. Okay. Hi. Okay. Uh, answer is no. Okay. And Martin. Okay, someone should like handle the merge while I am. Oh, hey Hugh, good to see you. Someone should handle the merge while I get us started so I don't like waste people's time. Yeah, don't worry. I also just updated myself to the agenda list. So, hope you all enjoyed the GraphQL Conf. Was it last week? Oh my God, it feels like so long ago for me. So let me get us started here. Welcome to the May 2026 GraphQL AI Working Group. By joining this working group, you essentially agree to our membership agreement, participation contribution guidelines, and code of conducts. So I am going to be the host today. My name is Kawei, and I'm dialing in from Menlo Park, sunny California. And I think we should do a quick intro. Let's use the order in the attendee list right now. So please refresh and figure out who is the next. I think Dale, you are the next.
Hi everyone, I'm dialing in from Toronto, Canada. Not very sunny today. I'm working at Apollo. I'm mostly working on Apollo MCP server and Apollo skills. That's it.
Awesome. We have Jan, who has not joined. So Pascal, to you.
Hi, I'm Pascal. I'm joining from sunny Switzerland. It's 30 degrees here, and this country is not built for this heat.
I know, Europe. I'm so sorry. I saw the heat wave in France. I'm like, oh my God, people don't actually have AC. So it's actually hotter than California today, Switzerland.
No heat for us.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Mark from Austin here.
Right.
That's me. Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff, working at Apollo, based in Connecticut. Yes, sunny, partly cloudy technically, but we won't split hairs there. I'll turn it over to Michael.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Morabello. I work for Airbnb and I'm in San Diego.
Martin.
And hello everyone, Martin from Paris. And I work at Apollo.
Hope the weather is okay. 30?
It's warm, warm.
It's warm. Okay. Not hot, just warm. Okay.
Oh, did we remove Yuke Wei? Oh yeah, you're not in the agenda anymore. I will put you back.
No, someone put me back. Okay.
I will
So
put
it
you back.
happens every single time. And then Hugh, don't forget to put your name in the attendee list later, but wanna give us an intro?
Yeah, my name is Hugh. I'm a software engineer at Meta. I'm based in Menlo Park, and I work on internal APIs at Meta.
All right. Okay. So we don't have agenda items from last time. To be honest, they are the same from what Pascal was proposing. Oh, and Steven just joined once you have just we literally just finished the intro. Do you want to be the last one too? Yeah.
Sure. Hi, I'm Steven. I work at Netflix. Great to be here.
Yeah.
And hi, folks. I'm Benji from Graphol.
Oh my God. I am so sorry. Okay, all of you, I'm gonna bug you to like put your names in the attendee list and then someone will merge it. A reminder, we still have GraphQL grants available. Martin is putting a lot of effort here trying to help us putting like the work to, we want to be paid while like making contributions to the GraphQL space. So typically we're looking for a blog post, like open source, like repo contribution, like GraphQL.js, graphical, and even this working group is like all of them are in scope. So if you have something that you are planning to work on and would like to get paid at the same time, please send out a kind of a application, and then you should also just ping me and Martin. In the meantime, we can actually help you draft that application and make sure it goes through. So I just want to give that a call out. We still have plenty of budgets, and I would honestly like to see something from the AI working group make into the grant. With that being said, we have the semantic something. Pascal, you have the floor. Before you jump in, I want to say not everyone actually, yeah, not everyone is in our like community working group day from last week. So if you can give people some recap of what we discussed, that would be great.
Yes. So I can try.
I'll help.
I am at the moment trying to figure out why my demo doesn't work. So I was hoping that someone would actually add something to the agenda so that I can hide. Am I still the only one?
You are still the only one that is about to talk about semantic something.
Okay, then let me just ramble something until I have figured out why stuff doesn't work.
Actually, Mark can give an update at mock. So Mark, you give that update while I add your topic into the agenda.
Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, we discussed this also at the working group day last week. So yeah, thank you to Michael, who has kind of really helped a ton with this and incorporating a lot of the learnings that they've had over at Airbnb. The mock spec is published on GAPS now. So that is over here. And there are still some like to-do feedback action items from Benji, and also I think we need to kind of tidy up the skill as well. But I think broad strokes, at least like at a high level, it's in like a good place, and there is a like demo thing that you can play around with it. So it is an open spec. Anyone can implement it. There is already an implementation using Apollo, an Apollo link as well. And we're probably going to start using this at Yelp. And my stated goal is that I very much like for this to not just be like a random thing that I maintain on my personal GitHub, especially given that from the conversations that we've had in this meeting and in person, there are like several companies all trying to essentially solve the same problem at once. And so it turns out, there's a ton of edge cases and a ton of complexity, and so it really does benefit everyone to have kind of like a centralized, well thought out spec for this. And so yeah, like that's why it's published as a gap. It's out in the open, anyone can use it. And might see if we can find a better home for the reference implementation. But that is the update. It's more or less done now, I think, at this point.
Gotcha. So just as a recap for this group, we've decided to essentially have operation level and field level mocks. And if you need a fragment level mock, you put it in the field, the color field.
Yeah, and that's elaborated on in the README as to why that's the case. But what does it mean to mock out like the fragment definition itself when you use that fragment in multiple places? So it's kind of a bit tricky. But yeah.
Okay, so right now, do you know, I think apart from Yelp and Airbnb, do you have other like partners interested in implementing it that you know of? I think we are pretty interested as well, but I don't know if we've reached out.
Yeah, I spoke to some folks last week. I know that Meta was interested in doing something along these lines. I vibe coded a Relay implementation of this as well. Haven't like played around with it too much yet. I want to post the version of that on the website as well, but like that's very much the goal. In theory, it can be used in Relay too. So that the door's very much open there. I spoke a little bit to Cheryl Martin, who I know there was some discussions at Apollo, so I'm not sure what the latest is there. There was someone from Expedia who I think ended up going with like a different sort of implementation, and one other company whose name is escaping me right now. So anyway, there's clearly like a ton of interest here.
Yeah, if you can send us the Relay implementation that you have, that would be great. I'm curious to learn what is like the challenge in implementing it, or it's basically okay.
Mark, I've also been meaning to open a PR with some of the stuff we talked about last week, so I'll make sure to do that this week, and I think that'll resolve some of the stuff we talked about.
Awesome. Yeah.
I have a question about this, and it's definitely not to keep you talking until I have my my demo running. Regarding the AtMock and Relay, how is the integration working there? So do I have to annotate with AtMock in my fragments, or does a server handle it, or how does that work?
Yeah, this is client only. The server does not have AtMock defined in the SDL, and so that implies like an AST transform before you do document hashing to pass it off to the server. At local dev time, when you're not using trusted documents and you're just kind of submitting untrusted documents in local dev, you would just kind of strip out the AtMock. And indeed, that is the way this is implemented in the reference implementation. There's the Apollo link, which is sort of like a client-side middleware, will transform the operation to remove any selections tagged with AtMock and replace them with the inline values that you've specified in the argument, or looking it up from the JSON file. You can open up the Chrome Network tab if you're interested. If you click on that MockSpec demo website that I just shared in the chat, and you click on the one where it's like field does not exist on the server, you can actually see the network request go to the country's GraphQL server and be like, it's not requesting this field, but it's showing up in my UI. How is it doing that? Magic. Yeah, that's AtMock.
Magic is always good. Okay. Did you ever consider doing this file-based? So that I can define a file, and this file will contain all of the extensions that I want to mock away?
Yes. For mocking out scalar values, and you just kind of are okay with like a single simple scalar value replacement, you would use the like value argument on the mock directive. But if you wanted to mock out a whole subtree of a response, then you would use like mock ID or mock variance as the argument name, and that corresponds to an object inside of a JSON file where the contents of that bit of JSON is what the network would send over. And so the reason, by the way, why this is part of the AI group is that we don't think it makes a ton of sense to maintain that whole scary nested mock by hand, especially if you're mocking out a whole operation. So the idea is that you would just tell your LLM, hey, like I just added at mock for this bit of the query. Can you generate a plausible response and just write it to the JSON file? So that's kind of like the workflow. The natural question is, what does that imply for unit test mocks? Can we reuse the same mock files there? I don't know. We haven't got to that yet. Maybe, but that's like a whole separate discussion, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, if anyone is interested in kind of using this at their company or using this in their framework, like let me know, and I want to help you do that, because I think this is something that, yeah, is sufficiently tricky that that's why it's a gap.
Yeah, I have two questions. I recently working on something similar, like mocking GraphQL data for agent evaluation. So based on your description, it seems like we are decorating the relay queries with mock data, which means that it has to be in the client side, like web client side. I wonder how can we use the system for, evaluating agents, which might not be in the web client. And also my second question is, how do we deal with mocking mutations?
Okay, both really good questions. For the mocking mutations, I should add a section for that on the website. I think that kind of just work out of the box already, in that it's not like treated as a special case. It's just like from the perspective of bytes over the wire, it's just still like a JSON blob coming back, and that's the level at which it operates on. So I'm gonna say, let me get back to you on that one to confirm that does indeed work the way that I think it works, and just sort of add like an explicit demo for that. That is my hope, expectation, but I haven't tried it. As for evaluating agents outside of the web client, could you elaborate a little more on what you mean by that? Sorry.
So we might have agent implementation in Python or Node.js, which doesn't have the relay library. So we might not have, not be able to read the mock data in the code, in the client web code. So is there a way for agents to use the same mock data so we can simulate the environment for the agent to use, so we don't have to hit production when evaluating agents?
Got it. Maybe in theory, yes, I would throw your agent at saying, hey, if you're about to send for this operation, use this mock. So we support operation level mocks, which I think is probably what you would want there if you are not like actually sending requests and you want to use this mock data somewhere else. Then yeah, you would just like tag the whole operation with, I want to use this mock thing, and then there's like a strong correlation between the mock ID that you tag it with, and that like maps to a mock defined in the JSON blob somewhere. If you're not using an actual client and you're just like writing a random script, then you'll be on the hook for, teaching it how, like, which mock file to use. But at least there's a defined mapping there which you can leverage. If you do have a different GraphQL client, like a Node GraphQL client, I mean, that's just like the fetch thing, right? Then the idea is this is a client agnostic specification that you should be able to implement yourself. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So in the chat thread, there is a side discussion about whether we want to put an explicit dependency on supporting empty selection set. And I think this is really getting into the implementation details of how you actually want to implement the mock. So one implementation that doesn't require empty selection set is you just execute that same selection set on the server, and on the client, you simply does the override it afterwards. So you override with whatever the value the client provides. The implementation that requires support for empty selection set is you basically the query that you send it to the server, we strip out those fields that being mocked completely and then just merge it afterwards. I'm wondering for Michael and Mark if you have preference on that.
Yeah, I think I would add two things, and Mark, feel free to chime in. I think one, it is important to do the stripping on the client side, primarily because one of the main things that AppMock is trying to solve is we want client engineers to be able to develop against schema which may not have actually been merged upstream. So you might have a local version of the schema that the server actually doesn't know about, and so if you query those, you're going to get an error back. So I think that's why stripping is required on the client as it is. I don't think there's a strict requirement for AppMock to depend on allowing empty selection sets, but it would significantly simplify it. So the section I linked here basically requires recursive stripping. So for example, if you AppMock a field and that makes the parent have an empty selection set, you then have to keep traversing up until you have a non-empty selection set and strip all of those things out. And if you end up with
so you essentially are forcing people to mock more, like a bigger section.
That's right.
If it actually results in an empty selection set.
Right. And then at some point you actually have to add it to the operation. For example, if you have this huge chain where you're only selecting one field and effectively all the fields are mocked, we should actually throw a validation error because the current version of the spec doesn't allow for empty selection sets. And so you have to mock at the operation level. But if we allowed empty selection sets, I think we can simplify this a bunch.
Yeah. And Benji brought up the edge case where you might have foo.bar.baz chained.
You keep bubbling, right? You keep bubbling all the way to the operation. Okay.
It's also just to add to that, there's complexities when it comes to lists, for example. If you request, say, a list of friends and then have mocking inside of that, you'll have a length of that list. But if you're trying to remove selections deeper, suddenly you have to mock that size and you don't know how big that's going to be, and it becomes much more complex. So I think we should, and this also applies to at client as well, for client local fields and any other client local things that we might want to add to the schema. So essentially what I propose to Mark is that we take all the complexity out of the AppMock directive, so it only needs to worry about its own things and not stripping all the other things away, because these are kind of a shared behavior that lots of these different proposals need.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I know we did a very informal voting last week. I think TSC members all supported for the empty selection set. Do we have a champion to drive that? Benji, you might know more.
Yes, I've already raised a pull request and it's added to the next working group, so we'll be discussing it in a week.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, then maybe I will just say it. I mean, it might be better if you're just depending on this thing, which we need. All right, and Pascal has reincarnated. So you have the floor.
Yeah. So apparently, the issue that I have is that I don't have enough battery, even though that my system was plugged in the whole day. And it seems to be really slow because of that. So let's hope that my good old friend, the power bank, can actually help me. Okay, so who has heard of... So this is crazy. So my code just compiled for 100 seconds, right? And it just never ended. That's why I restarted. Then I plug it into my power bank and it's just compiled. Fantastic. Okay, so let's hope.
You're using a laptop, right? Who uses a laptop with a power bank?
Well, I have it plugged into my docking station. I don't know what's broken. If it's my docking station, or maybe I just use too much power because my AC is.
Okay, apparently Jeff thinks it's truly revolutionary. Maybe I need to get one.
Power banks. You don't need. Then you can run all the models locally.
Okay.
Okay. So, who has heard of semantic introspection? Or who hasn't? Because we did in the workgroup day, we had a group which was talking about semantic introspection, and there were a lot of people with a lot of opinions, which is fantastic. And it turns out that there is things in semantic introspection that are good, and things in semantic introspection that generally people do not really like. So what people do not like is the following. Let me share the screen. Okay, share. Okay. So what people do not like is the introspection part of semantic introspection, which makes me a bit sad, because that's half of the name. And semantic introspection does two things. It does search, which returns the semantically most probable results for the query that we pass in. And there's also definitions which will return the definitions of the coordinates that we pass in. And the LLM then first does a search when we have a question, and then calls definitions. Now, there's two problems with this. First of all, or three problems. First of all, we need introspection, which we tell people since 10 years should be disabled on their server. Second is that it's always gonna, or most likely, most often gonna be two turns. We first do a search, and then we have to do a second turn to do definitions. And as soon as we have turns, it's worse than any IO that we had before in software engineering. When we call an LLM, we wait for seconds to be for it to resolve. And the third problem, we'll get back to this problem, is that there is actually a thinking step between search and definitions. Meaning that when we do a search, the model has to think and decide what's actually relevant to answer the user's query, and based on this, then call definitions, which wastes thinking tokens. So what we have decided, what we have discussed is that even though that's maybe, we don't know yet, that's what we are trying to figure out at the moment, semantic introspection is not ideal. There is something which is very useful when we semantically can work with a schema. And one thing which the folks at the GraphQL found really interesting is the idea of having a endpoint /GraphQL/schema. So now, don't you worry, it's going to be this in the end, but at the moment it's /foo/search, which returns a full schema. And what we can do now is, let's just hope it works. I can now pass in a query, and I can say, are there any schools in Bedok? And what should happen is that I get, oh no, what happened now?
Question mark, Pascal, you have a combinator. You need to question mark there. You see? The Q.
Yeah, so it's not %, it's question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Means you're not using REST enough.
Yeah, it's because I'm not using REST enough. Okay, so that
are you missing like a quote, or is that an extra quote? Because I'm seeing one double quote.
It doesn't really matter, because what happened is that because of my restart, save to go outside Bedok. Because of my restart, I most likely lost my open API.
Oh, okay. So yeah, whatever. Okay, it's okay. Yeah.
So this will essentially filter down the schema, and then we only get a semantically equivalent or we only get the semantically relevant part for our user question. So we get a subset of a schema. We decided that this should be a valid subset of the schema. And we said that the semantic something, which will get a name at some point, will have an integration into the HTTP specification, just as we have seen. But there is also going to be a definition of this, which is going to live outside of the graphical over HTTP specification. And then 1 second, I can show you a demo. So
you
just have to
stopped
believe me.
sharing screen.
Yeah, I have to share a different window. Okay, so this needs to go into case study. Yep. And then this one maybe? Yes. So I broke it, but I have proof that it worked at least once today. And then I can also show you the issues that I've already discovered this. So it turns out that it's actually not that simple to figure out what's semantically meaningful in the schema, especially because there's no smart LLM on the backend. It's just going to be essentially embeddings, BM25, trigram, or whatever you use, or a combination of all of them, which turns out to be necessary to actually have good results. Then, do you see my screen?
Terminal, right?
Terminal, yes,
Yep.
with Claudius, our friend, which still such an old model that it runs. It's crazy. 4.7. Who uses 4.7 these days? So what we do is we ask our model the question if it's safe to go outside in Bedok today. And it then does a search on the schema and gets returned the part of the schema that we deem, or the semantic search deems relevant. There I have like done 40 or 50 different strategies and implementations to figure out what the relevant part is. And it's quite hard. And this is also a bit where the problem starts, right? Because this schema that I return here is still fairly large. I benchmark against GitHub, GitLab, Linear, Shopify, and my demo schema. And it works quite well. Either approach works quite well, semantic introspection and semantic search, to work with all of the schema. So when you work with the GitHub schema, it actually works quite well with the semantic search as well, which is a bigger schema. What happens is that now we ideally only have 2 hits. So we essentially have 1 hit to the schema endpoint, and then we have a hit with the query, and then we have all the data to answer our question. We also, depending on how big the schema slice is, maybe have enough information to do a second call without having to do the search. In there we go. In semantics introspection, this is different. We most likely always have a search first, because the knowledge of what we have fetched is a bit slimmer. And then what I see sometimes being a bit a challenge is that the expansion from this schema is the expansion from a point where we are at the moment is much simpler with semantic introspection, because semantic introspection essentially always does a second search, or most of the time, and then decides if it's relevant with the thinking step to fetch more information through definitions and so on. And I've benchmarked a few test queries. I have a set of like 800 tests, which are generated more or less, where I evaluate mass recall and how big the schemas are that are generated with the different strategies. And in my manual tests, I test against GitHub and against this demo schema. And both approaches seem to work quite well in answering my questions. One problem I see is that in semantic introspection, it is easier for the model to figure out where additional information is because it can selectively expand. And with the primitive approach that we have at the moment in semantic search, where we say we essentially return a subschema, the model it's a bit harder for the model to expand.
But Pascal, is that because, like, I mean, we talked about it already, but is that because it thinks like the schema is already complete? Because typically you have a complete artifact, and that kind of confuses.
It's a challenge, because how would the model know if it's complete or not, right? If it has something which looks like already in the schema that it could answer the question, it may just do it. But it also, with Opus, it also sometimes replied to me that it cannot answer my question without doing a second search. So I changed the prompt a bit, and now it does the second search in case that it doesn't have enough information. So we can tune it. The main issue I see is that the semantic introspection is more selective with what it fetches, or can be more selective, and therefore it can easier fan out when it needs more information about the specific type. And we do have a bit of an issue with the schema that when we need a second search with the current very primitive implementation, we again get a full schema back. And we talked about the anchors in the graphical day. Essentially, that you can say that you want to only, instead of starting from the schema, so query, mutation, or subscription root, you want to start from a different place. So you want to say expand from, I don't know, the repository type downwards and search more information.
But this was more for the fragment focused work, like the two use cases we have, right? Like exploring data, where we need the root to be the root, like basically query. And then a thing like relay, where we want to focus on a certain component data contract. But there was the other thing, like that Lee brought up, right? About
stateful.
That we might need a way to have a cursor which represents state. So we kind of can patch the schema that we have locally.
Yes.
So the schema basically grows.
Hey, Pascal. So in this approach, there's no score concept?
We compute the score during the exploration. So essentially, we do. So how this is implemented at the moment is, I mean, there has been so many implementations which worked well and other worked terribly. What seems to work the best in this case is you semantically search for a type that most likely the user wants to see. And then you start fanning out from this type. So on one side, you have the paths to root. So there's a way how you can fetch the type. And on the other side, you have to include fields so that you can actually fetch data once you build the query. And internally, we score the type rank. And then for top K, I believe 20, we start building the integrating fields into this type with different weight, with different values. Like it's cheap to include a scalar field. It's more expensive to include an edge. It's cheap to include an edge, which we already know. So it's equal to a scalar field, and all of these things then essentially define how much or how expensive it is to add a field.
Yeah, the idea, I think, how Lee phrased it was to have kind of a budget, right, Mr.?
Yes, so we do have a budget, but a budget is not enough. It's really like there's so many parameters that you can tune to get the relevant schema out. I think I will post this later. I have a Node.js implementation with all of the strategies in it, and it's like 25 different parameters that you can tune to get exactly the slice that you want. Because like if you just rank top K, then you have to know, like, from the type, you have to know which types are relevant, and then in the fields you have to at some point stop, because you will always get new fields, right? So at some point you have to say that the drop off in relevance with the similarity is so big that it doesn't matter anymore, and then you stop including the fields. And then there's a cutoff when this has to be, with the detection for a cliff and all of these things that we have to have to make this work. The trick to get the master recall up is to merge the different topologies that we have found in the end, and then essentially return one schema. Yeah. So there is a score. There's many different scores.
But it's kind of an implementation detail, right? You could also completely do it without score if you wanted. Like from the idea, you have a search that you formulate to the GraphQL server. It returns to you a schema with fields in it.
Yep.
There's also like Pascal experimented with BM25, for instance, for search and combination of BM25 and embeddings and stuff like that. So there's yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's always going to be a combination, because essentially you give a lexical boost if you have a field which matches the user request, or if you have something in the description which exactly matches the user request. And this is really, really valuable to pull up certain coordinates that you really want to have in the quiz. Hugh?
Pascal, for the second call to get the definition of the fields, have you seen a case where the return STL is too big because some of the types contain too many fields, like hundreds and thousands of fields?
Yes, so this is indeed a problem that semantic introspection has. When the type that is returned is too big, then you have to page through there's no pagination. You will just get all of the JSON back. And I see now that semantic introspection, the thinking step in semantic introspection works surprisingly well in selecting what the user wants to see.
Yep.
Whereas the semantic search is surprisingly good, or is good. It's not surprisingly good, but it's quite good to decide what fields you want to see in the types. So there could be a combination of the two at some point, which becomes interesting. I think there's still potential that we have a thinner representation in S. So at the moment, the schema that we return is still quite big. In terms of I can't remember the numbers, but it's still quite big. It's up to I believe 40 kilobytes or something. So it's quite heavy. And that's just how you tune your function. I think what we can do is we can make this a bit more strict, and then we need to find a way how you can essentially have the same exploration step that we have with semantic introspection, but based on semantic search. Because I still think that if we can do a semantic search and we get the schema right the first time, then we save a hop. If we don't get it right at the moment, we have to do a second search, which returns the full schema again, which is not ideal. So maybe there is something that we can play around with, maybe even posting the schema that we have, and then only returning the diff as extend types and things like this. It's just things that we have to play around.
Sorry, earlier I had a hand, but I think Pascal was kind of thinking along the lines that you were suggesting. Essentially, because the semantic introspection approach, we have the __ search phase, and then we have the __ definitions phase. I feel pretty strongly that the __ definitions phase should be the one that we can put into the HTTP spec. And essentially, you would use anything semantic like BM25 or like embeddings so to do that subtyping, right? Because today, if I understand correctly, the __ definitions side doesn't have any ML or ranking involved. You literally like, this is what your input, and I just get the entirety of my schema. So I feel like that part we should be able to just say that is part of the, well, we return the semantic relevant sub SDL. And then I do feel like I kind of agree with you, and I think Hugh, in your implementation, you were kind of intentionally splitting out into the first search phase, right? That kind of returns something very, very limited. That's not SDL. That's literally tells you this type exists. I'm not giving you the full definition of the type, but then I also tell you where this type is in my schema. So if you actually want to look up it, you kind of returned the index portion without the context. So I think that we keep what it is. Introspection makes sense to me. I would also say you could easily convert that into a HTTP endpoint as well if you want to keep it part of the HTTP request spec.
Yeah. So, and I think I agree. I think the __ definitions field might even be something that we could introduce to maybe not the core, but it could be, it's irrelevant if you use AI or not. It's essentially just a way to batch fetch definitions in introspection.
Well, the thing that would be different from what your proposal is, we would have the search query in it because we want to introduce subtypes, right? So given a type like this humongous, I'm gonna only return the fields that are, oh, partial. Yes, something like that. But essentially, that's why the definitions portion would still have that semantic element into it. And personally, I feel strongly that SDL is the format you want for that step because model really knows how to read it, and this is probably the most token efficient way of doing it. Dale?
Can I ask a question about semantic introspection?
Yeah.
Not this one. So Pascal, Michael, like you guys were seeking feedback on the spec. So I tried to implementing the spec using pgvector and different embedding models. And I realized that the source range can vary by models. So like for example, like I set mean score to 0.8 with the exact same schema and same query, and I got 0 results when I used OpenAI text embedding 3 small. But I got a bunch of results when I used Qwen 3 embedding. So I feel like the mean score input field should be optional so that the server can provide a reasonable default depending on the implementation. Like it's really difficult for clients to know the right mean score without knowing the implementation or without knowing the embedding model used in the implementation.
Yes, I agree. So a trick there is to be always, you can always normalize to 1. But then you just cheated a bit. But I think the min score is something that we have to get away from, because I see it now when we do the schema search, the scores become irrelevant because it's an implementation detail how relevant the score is. It's also very schema dependent how relevant the score is. I have a 4.6 or a 4.4 average when I use my schema, my demo schema, and I do semantic search. And I get a 2.5 or something in average when I do the GitHub schema. So even the min score is very, very, very different depending on how your schema looks like, how many descriptions you have, and all of these things. And also depends on how you query, right? If you query something which is very clear what you want, the cliff is going to be high and very easy to detect. When you have something that you query which you're not quite sure what you want, then this window of probability needs to dynamically adjust. So I'm not a fan of having a min score in the specification. Also in the specification of semantic search, because maybe you don't even have a score. Maybe it's something else in semantic search.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I think we have to keep exploring here a bit. There is a lot of questions to solve, and there's also a lot of exploration to do because it very much depends on your schema. For example, there's also it's quite ironic. There's the conundrum that you need descriptions to have good embedding scores.
Do you? I'm sorry. Okay, I think you and I disagree on this.
But you don't need good descriptions when well, it depends. I would say if you have no descriptions, the scores are higher. If you have descriptions, the scores are lower because the field of probability gets a bit blurred. But you can steer with the description what you want to have returned. If you then return the schema, you kind of don't want descriptions because it's just wasted tokens. But sometimes you actually want to have descriptions so that the model knows what to do. So it's a bit, yeah.
I think in practice, like changing like field names or time names are very difficult. Like once it's already used by clients. So I see so many like people actually using description to correct things after. For example, a very like fun thing, like we had some typos in the field names, but no one, like
you can't
dare to update the fields because it was like
it's used, right?
Yeah, it's already used. So like it was difficult to justify fixing the typos in the field name. So instead, like they added the right name in the description, and that helped actually search.
Okay,
Yeah.
good use of description.
Description is important, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's also sometimes it's used for what the data is, but this could also be declared with
I
proper
think that's
scalars.
more like examples instead of descriptions.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael, what you're thinking.
I proposed to Benji I think I showed it to you too, Quay, the add example directive.
Yeah.
Which we could have somewhere as either a gap or specification or whatever, which is motivated from something completely different than AI, but I think it's very, very valuable here. The reason why I came up with the add example directive essentially is because I opened Swagger and I saw that they have examples and we do not. So that's why I thought examples would be nice. But then it becomes very relevant to have to embed them, because if I do, for example, search for something like what's the weather like in Baddock, and the argument name is the name of a region, and one of the example values is Bedok, then this is a very strong indication that I want to have this root field as the entry point. Yeah, there is one thing I fixed my demo. So this is the GitHub schema, and I asked the GitHub schema what. So let's first just fetch the GitHub schema. This is huge. It's not that big, but compared to my demo schema, it's quite big. And there is, if you now do this query, you get a reduced set of results. It's still in this implementation quite large and definitely has to come down in size. But to answer the question about probabilities and
but it also has all the descriptions in Pascal, right? That's
yes, I think I can in average over my 200 tests, I can save 50% in tokens if I just remove all the descriptions. That's one thing. And the other thing is I now have a new algorithm which I have to implement, which Claudius has to implement. That will essentially reduce the average size by 30% in my tests, in my benchmarks at least. And thanks to AI, like quite literally, it's possible to do these experiments, because that would take, like, for each of these strategies, you would lose a day or two to try them out. And now it's essentially you come up with a new idea, and then you can implement the strategy and try it out in the benchmarks. So talking about probabilities, you see we live in a world of probabilities, and this is quite fun. Essentially, when I ask this, then we get the type hits. I ask what was the latest commit in GraphQL/platform, which is our repository. Actually, that's wrong, in Chili Cream/GraphQL-platform. And what's interesting here is that commit, for example, is what I want, but the funding link gets scored better. Now, these things happen, so you cannot just take the type which is the best. So you take a bunch of types, then you start fanning out, you start scoring them, and at some point you realize that the type funding link is most likely not what you want. You want something else, and then you start folding them together, to merge them, to skip them because of different reasons, and it's a lot of fun. But it's also much more complicated than just doing a cosine insert and returning the member which matches the best.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of this is a really good example, right? Because your commit could be like, I commit to a donation, which is probably why the funding link was the most relevant, or it could be our code commits. So
yeah.
Okay. I think, Pascal, you convinced me that we need two separate steps. One is the search, and then one is the definition. Because the search is just, please return me the index, and without, because otherwise the total amount of tokens is going to be too big.
I'm not 100% settled yet on this. I think if we get it right, and another week, maybe.
Well, the thing
then we may get, if we get the index every time, and in 60% of the time we also get the fields that we need to answer the question in the same shot, then fair enough. And then there needs to be a way to expand. So I think this is the route that we can still explore, because otherwise it's going to be something completely different. I played around with this idea, by the way, as well, that we don't return a schema. We essentially return a graph of types or fields or whatever, and then you can decide what you want as a next space to expand. But yeah, we'll see.
So Pascal, you are basically trying to see like how good agents will be will be at building operations with minimum kind of minimum information, right?
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
With the idea of the graphical either introspection, the graphical server or an MCP or whatever, being able to give the slice of the schema which is relevant for the user's question.
So essentially, I mean, do you have two use cases, right, from which you want to explore the schema at the moment? Like you want to code something, you want to build something, and you want to explore, like you want to give the agent a capability to explore the schema. And you have the other thing where you want to answer questions about your data. You have natural language questions, and you want to give the agent the capability to just fetch the data from your data graph that is needed to answer this question. So both are, so basically the search is the basis for both of these use cases.
Yeah, like I think we should be careful about the like about the like about the like agents ability to build operations because like we also have like local LLMs, right? And I see like they are not really good at building operations and I think our like spec and needs should cover like both ends. Like there's like a large spectrum, local LLMs and the how do you call it? Like frontier models, right? So
which model? I don't have the hardware to run local models. Which of the OpenAI or Anthropic models do I have to run to kind of emulate this?
Yeah, but it's also very different. Like local specialized. Do you mean just a dumber model like a 4.1 or 3.5 turbo, or do you mean like specialized models? Because specialized models might not even know what GraphQL is.
Yeah, I was thinking about general models who are not like as intelligent as frontier models. And if I remember correctly, like at the GraphQL Conf, there was a talk on GraphQL Bench from Michael Watson, and then actually in his approach, he was providing the whole operations so that agent can just run it. Yeah, so
but why then even return the operation and not just the result?
That's just a really small schema, right? Like I think the next step from that return the operation is just to execute it. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So
yes, there's a trade-off between I don't know, like with like if we give agents more freedom, right? Like actually they can do all kinds of different things, but at the same time they can go wrong. So if we give like very like specific results, it can just run it and then it will work well, most models.
But that sounds just like you need very specific tools, right? Whereas the search is also about exploration and reasoning.
So left side, semantic introspection, right side, semantic search. Model is Haiku. It's the the dumbest one I have available.
Yeah.
Do I can try it with an old OpenAI model as well, I guess. I cannot run.
I think you should try with local LLMs. Like even Haiku is, it's a remote models, right?
Do you want an Ollama or?
Yeah, things like that, exactly.
But
Yeah.
Ollama is same level or as a Haiku, or even smarter actually as an Haiku.
I don't know how many.
And Ollama is
Depending on which version of Haiku.
yeah, and also how many parents and stuff. But in general, Ollama 3 is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can try this out, and I can give you feedback, Dale, about how well this works locally. I can also push what I have so that you can run this. It's a dev container, so you can just open it in VS Code, and then you will have everything you need to get this to run. And
Yeah,
then
let me
you can
also
see.
give a try. Like my like information might be outdated. Like I tried these local models like a few months ago, and now I remember I was really disappointed.
Yeah, should I try a Qwen 3 or?
It was like
That is still pretty good. Qwen
What
3 needs a GPU.
I'm sorry. I only work with frontier models because they're still so cheap.
But I think like that's not a safe assumption, right? Like the assumption that people will have frontier models available.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, I order my pizza with Opus 4.7, so it's not at the moment, at least for me. I haven't really explored the local models for this. But let's see. I guess the thing still holds, right? If we get the slice correctly, then it's the model's way to figure out how GraphQL works, and it either can or it cannot. And then we have to figure out how we can teach the model to build a query. What I've seen so far is that they are pretty good in building queries based on both, based on the schema as represented in coordinates, and also based on the schema represented as SDL.
But there is a concern, Pascal, right? If the model has to reason about SDL, it has to have some capabilities to understand GraphQL.
Yes.
Really? I thought it's the same.
I haven't tried it, but that's my we are confronting the model with a GraphQL schema, right?
Yeah. And then same for introspection, right? Like introspection result.
Any of these approaches that we have so far.
Yeah. You have to have some notion of GraphQL. Yeah.
Because the other way would be you would search and you would present a tool, but the idea with the approaches that we are doing at the moment is to give the model a way to reason about and then select by itself the right thing it needs for its task. If you want to strip this out, it's basically search and here's a tool.
Yes, there is one thing which I looked at is, I think you, Quay, told me this, but I'm not sure. You also verify against the queries that you execute?
Yeah. I mean, you have to verify first, right?
No. I mean, you search also queries, and if there's a query which can answer the question, you just use the query which already knows.
Oh yeah, it's like our cache layer, if you will. We have a RAG for pre-written queries because we feel like people ask similar questions again and again. So we basically store the mod or queries that previous model already created into a separate RAG as well. And then given that a new user question, the first thing we do is there like an already existing query that solves that question? If so, we just execute that one first.
Yeah, if this data is really good for the, linear, how do you call it?
Token, turns, latency.
No, the fitting of the curve, linear interpolation, to get, all the parameters right, so that we get exactly the right slices back. Because a query essentially defines the must recall of the schema. If you
Yeah.
have a query, you know exactly what coordinates you have to return. So
Yeah.
we can essentially use this to fine tune. And you could technically say, this is my schema, and this is a set of query which I know works. And
Yeah.
based off this, you could essentially start fine tuning the
Your
parameters of
model. Yeah.
how, not even the model, even just the linear function of the graph algorithm. Because you could essentially say that should you include this type or not depends on so many different parameters.
Yeah.
How steep the cliff is, and how your average cosine is, and all of these things. And I think if we really want to make this perfect, then you need demo queries.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're way over time. I think HTTP spec people have wait for you in the room, and I am also late for my next meeting. But thank you so much, Pascal, for presenting this. And let's talk about the next steps in the next meeting. Thank you so much.
Bye.